let's go over my work area and the tools and the layout. Select you a place where you can lay your supplies out, such as I have here. The tools, parts that come in bags with a list of items in each. And there is the Stealth Fender. This is the back part. The flat part is going to mount to the back here. Now, before we go any further, there are 4 holes you have to drill into the back, and we're going to go through all of this. It's not really that hard to do. So the tools that are not listed in the tool list is a 17 millimeter deep socket, and you must remove the tire, and that's what it takes. So I'm going to use a 1/2 inch, so I needed a reducer and that, and a cheat bar, because they put those babies on with a impact wrench. Okay, this is going to be the top support, which is right here, assembling top attachment brace, and they're showing how you should put that screw together and mount it through that hole. It's important to get this correct orientation, so you go through the bottom, but first, and I'm only going to show you one screw according to this, and you assemble it according. Lock washer right there, and this is a square nut right here. You pull her all the way up, and what you do is you put this through there, and it should fit in just like that. And then the next thing, and this is showing the top part right here, you take another nut, a 1/4 inch nut, and you're going to tighten this down. Now, I am going to tighten that down with a wrench and everything, because this is going to be mounted behind the splash panel, and this bolt is going to stick through a hole that we're going to drill through the splash panel. So you want this tight down against there, and then that will be finished. Now, the rest of this is going to be for the assembly of the fender, which is going to fit over this. Now, I will go to the bottom one, or the middle support. And the middle support, if you'll notice, or attachment brace they're talking about, is it's mounted like this. Middle attachment brace, top view. And this is the top view. Okay? It's going to use 2 bolts through there. These 2 inch by 1/4. And here you have 2 more. And they're going to take a square nut, but if you'll notice, you have a lock washer that goes on first. I'm just going to assemble one. So you put that on. And if you'll notice, it goes straight through the hole over here. And then on the back side, you will put a square nut, which we have 3 of these. Now, I did find out that you're actually going to need 4 of the 1/4 inch hex nuts. They're working on that to get the inventory of parts correct, but it's like anything new, you're going to run into things. So we want that that square nut right here. So we put this baby in, and it's straight in. Now what we can do is we push it down, and then you can just twist it all the way down like that. Later I will take a wrench and tighten that down. This is the way it's going to mount. Behind the splash panel, that's what it's going to look like. There's going to be 3 holes in the splash panel and 1 more for the light up at the top. But we've assembled this. Now the top one, you want to tighten this up like this first. Because you're tightening a nut or a bolt up against a nut on the top. So make sure you tighten down here. You could even use a socket. Then you should tighten here to give it the full. You do the next one. Now these don't have a problem because the nut, there's only 1 nut back there. So you can just simply tighten this up to where it's tight. Now, here is the 6.17mm socket. It's 3/8 drive. I want to use my 1/2 inch ratchet to really give it some beef. So I'm going to need a reducer, 1/2 to 3/8, and I stick that on there. And then I want a little extension out there, 3/8, and then I can go there. So that will work. Now, if you'll notice, I got me a piece of pipe here. I think it's 1 inch, something like that. Anyway, what will happen is it will give me leverage. They put these things on pretty darn tight with a torque or impact wrench, but this will overcome that if you just stick her in there, and you can just simply pull up on it, and you got all the leverage you need. Now watch that. There we go. We have the tire removed. We have the wheel chocks under the front wheel, both front and back, so it can't go either way. I have the motorcycle jack so that it's resting on the frame. We are going to remove these 3 Torque 35 screws, and we are at the point where we're going to replace them with a hex nut, and we're going to slip the fender in place, screwing the 3 hex nuts down and finding the 4 holes that we need to place in this sloping panel here. Okay, we're going to remove these completely, all 3. Now I'm going to start putting these bolts in its place. You can put your finger back up underneath and you will feel the back of the screw that's welded in place. You want to screw this in until you just feel the tip of the screw hitting your finger, like such. Okay, I just feel it. You do all 3 that way and pull the washers back, because we're going to later slip the fender in place on these screws and then tighten them down. Now here you're going to find that the instructions tells you to place the fender in position to be able to mark the holes, but we need to remove this license plate. Now to unplug the wire, there's a locking clip underneath here. You stick your fingernail under there or some sort of a screwdriver tip, and you have to kind of like this. Use your thumbnail, pull it down, and then it'll unplug. If you don't pull this down, you're not going to get this loose. Gently bring it down. So there we go. Save the screws. We're going to put this at a low angle. I'm going to go back as far as I can, trying to line up on that first one. Push down, and there. You want to make sure that they're on there and that the washers are all in place. And they are. We need to hold this up tight against there. This is where my little strap is going to come in play. It's rubber, and what it is an exercise strap right there, and it's holding it in place. There's my third hand, and here's how I secured it. Okay, so now it'll stay in place. And this is important that you tighten. All three of these need to be tightened fully, and it pushed up as far as it can go. I'm going to tighten this up so that it's up against there like that and held in place, and then we'll show you how we're going to mark it. But that's what it should look like. Now this is where the 10mm socket comes in play, and the little 1/4" ratchet. You want to make sure that all three of these slots are all the way down, and you want all three of these tight. This is very critical that this fender is in the correct position before we mark these holes. It'd be hard to change it later. And the centering of the fender is going to be based on the fact that all three of these are bottomed out on the screw or the bolt. All right, I'm going to mark. This is how much time I'm going to spend marking. 1,000. That's all I need to put a mark on there, because we do not want anyone to drill through and go into their gas tank. 1,000 is all you need to make a mark, and then we're going to look for that mark with a little moderate pressure to give it a nice little dimple. All right, watch this. And try to go in at the angle a 90 degree, you know, not like this, but try to go in just about like that, holding her. All right, 1,000. I can see a little mark there. All right, and then I'm going to go over here, loosen the bolts first, back to a loose point like it was before, with the screw all the way back to where it's just flush with your finger on the back. But we want to drill out these three holes from a 1/4" to 3/8. Right here, here, and here. Okay, go. And this will also ensure that you have a nice alignment later on when we go to align the fender. Now we are going to drill the wire hole, and I've turned it around looking from inside. These are the middle braces, assembly braces, the top and the middle one. This is where the wire is going to go through. This is what they want us to do. Holding the fender, we want to go in at an angle, and going from the other side would be hard to do. So you want to go in at an angle like this, and I'm going to put her here, and I'm going to now we're at the stage where we're going to turn the fender over upside down. Now this is the license plate bracket. This is the rear, and that's the front sloping mounting face. You take the end that has one plug like this. There's one that has two. That's going to be the license plate and your wire strip, light strip. That's what that's going to be. That's going to end up coming out the back. So you take the one plug only, and you thread it through And you go through the center wire guide, and you come out through this little hole right here. Now this is going to take a little doing. Okay, this is not in the book, but I found with a pair of long nose pliers, and if you get the connector right down here close and being careful to grab it and just and pulling on the wire just a little bit, get her so she's, and the wire's kind of bent just a little bit. Okay, and you just go in there. There. It's going to take a little working, but when you get it that way, then you could even cut just a little bit of this out right here. Would probably work a lot better. It needs to have a little oblong area to get this so that you can push it through the hole, because you cannot line it up no matter how you drill it, and you want it to come out this way. So that's it. And when you do put it in there, you could put a little upward bend so that it's automatically wanting to go up. But be careful not to crush this the little thing there. Okay, now we're supposed to leave about 7 inches out. I'll give you some of this protective covering, so you can put you a little piece over the areas that are going to be exposed. These are called tenement clips, and there's a correct way to put them. If you'll notice, the little lip that's facing down, and there's a flat part. The flat part should be up, and this curved lip should be facing down. And this is the way you can put them in. You have to kind of go at an angle like that, there, and then wiggle. Then once you get it to a certain point, use a screwdriver to try and push. Use the hole to kind of line you up. There you go. And then you can kind of push this baby in that way. There, not hard. Okay, you've got a bunch of zip ties. You want to put these through here in the opposite direction and kind of face them so that they're going to be ready to be clipped. That one goes that way, and then this one will go this way. Now we're going to take the license plate, which is going to be facing back, and it's going into these 3 locations for 3 screws that originally mounted to the back of the undersplash panel. Okay, now I just finger tighten these, all 3. And what we're going to do is to do some alignment. We're going to use these tie wraps to make sure that the back end is aligned before we tighten all these down. So just secure the 3 loosely, but down to where that you're not very far from snugging it all the way down. And then we're going to tighten these up, and that will ensure that everything is lined up.